What's the best rivalry in GEA? So myself and Michael did a video on Thursday about the Cork versus Tipperary rivalry and wearing the Orga retro jerseys. And I ended up throwing up a poll on Twitter just to see what did people think it was. So based on some of the comments I had got in, I looked at Tipperary versus Cork, Dublin Kerry, Galway Mayo, and then others. So please comment. At the moment, Dublin Kerry is ever so slightly leading it, but there's a huge amount of comments coming in, and that poll will be open for a good while yet. Just a couple of the comments, Michael Verney. Anything in particular catch your eye?
No, Shane, nothing has caught my eye because I haven't looked at them yet, being honest with you, because I didn't see the poll. So you chat away there and I'll find a few comments.
Okay, I'll find them myself. You're no good to anyone. So John Walsh is saying Kilkenny versus Wexford. The Judge Goodmark says merely the fact that it's excluded from your provocative little poll proves that Kilkenny versus Tipperary is the greatest rivalry in GAA history. But is it like, I mean, could you really compare the Tipperary Kilkenny rivalry over the course of the history to Tip against Cork? Because Tip and Cork have played somewhere between 85 and 90 times. Tip and Kilkenny have played far fewer, something like 30. 12-8 to Tipperary in All-Ireland finals, of course. There's no, you had to drag that out of me. What do you think, Fintan, as a Cork man?
I think this is your way to try and forget about that kind of Munster-Leinster border that you kind of share in one part of the county, is it? And just focus on a different rivalry. Are we looking here like over the kind of entirety of the GA history? Is it a particular spell?
I think it's over the course, but like if you think that there was a concentrated period that made a rivalry so brilliant, then fair enough, it kind of deserves mention. Because like Dublin Kerry, they probably for many decades or for certain periods they wouldn't have met that often, whereas Tip and Cork for 100 years plus 130 years they're meeting pretty much every year or every second year at worst.
Yeah, well, I would think kind of Dublin Kerry is kind of one that kind of stands out nationally. I mean, the thing with Tip Cork, like from what I kind of think in the 90s it seemed like Cork were getting knocked out of the championship by Clare when I kind of started getting into hurling, and maybe Limerick. And then in the noughties it was Cork Waterford really was kind of a rivalry that kind of stood out for me, because I mean they weren't just like I know Cork Kilkenny had that kind of time they were playing in finals and all that, but I mean the frequency of the Cork Waterford meetings, they were playing each other in the Munster Championship, and then loads of years they were ending up against each other again in Croke Park. And I think the kind of drama in that period and the kind of characters involved, like there's a lot of big personalities on both sides. So like as regards a really concentrated spell, I mean like you go back to the 80s and Cork were in the complete ascendancy, the early 80s over Waterford. But that definitely changed in that kind of noughties period. And I'm not even just talking about I think people are kind of sick of seeing the 04 Munster final kind of talked about at this stage. I mean, I think there was other games like that, the 07 drawing game in Croke Park, the 06 semi-final in the rain, and like the 07 semi-final replay. Like those couple of seasons, like I think they served up some absolutely brilliant matches. And then like a lot of it as well then comes down with rivalry, comes down to I suppose kind of geographical proximity. It does stoke it up. I mean, I remember like they never really played each other, but someone saying to me before 2018, before Galway played Clare, that there would be a big hurling rivalry in a certain pocket between the counties, but it's never really kind of expressed because they don't see each other that often. But it kind of came out that year. I mean, you talk about the Kilkenny Wexford one, that's probably one that jumps out because you have a lot of Kilkenny guys would have gone to school saying New Ross. There's people kind of working as well, I suppose, is the thing, kind of everyday life, isn't it? If you're kind of interacting with the counties, Waterford, Kilkenny would have kind of talked about that as well. But I think over kind of the wider history, I think Dublin Kerry is the one that kind of stands out in football. I know what you're saying in terms of they went a long stage without meeting each other, and at times you're thinking, is that it kind of too weighted or too focused on the kind of the nostalgia of the 70s and 80s? But you take last year's 2019 games, I don't know, there's just something about that pairing as a neutral kind of watching it that kind of elevated it a bit when I was at those games.
Yeah, I'll throw it to you in a second, Michael. Pat Gleeson came in with a good comment. Pat Gleeson at Drangan. The back door has diminished the Tip Cork rivalry in my opinion. The great John Doyle, who was a critic of the back door, once said he'd hate to wake up on a Monday after beating Cork the day before to the news that Cork were still in the championship. So that's probably a fair one. And I'd say similarly to Cork Kerry in football, that because they can meet again later in the summer, and they've probably met at least 20 times in the championship during this century. I'd probably say similarly for Tyrone Armagh, which has obviously had some unbelievable games over the years, Michael.
Yeah, it's probably diluted somewhat. Like if you're looking back through the history of a rivalry, I think Tip Cork in hurling and Dublin and Kerry stand tall, well tall above anything else. But like we did the Arga Retro rivalry video the other day, and we didn't talk about hardly any game between the two since the backdoor was brought in. We talked about the 2010 game and maybe a bit about '06, but I mean, like, in the last 4 or 5 years, and when they're going to play in the Munster Championship every year and could play again, we didn't talk about any of those games. So it does possibly dilute a rivalry. But I think historically, when you go back through it and knowing that they were going to play most years, or in particular, they were going to play most Munster finals, there's some great yarns. Like, I don't know if you'll beat the Tip Cork yarns just back through history. If you're talking about nationally over two counties, Dublin and Kerry probably is it, and it's the opposite effect of not playing each other every year. It's that every year that goes past when they don't play each other, you just, oh geez, I wish Dublin would play Kerry. Yeah, this Dublin team is unreal, but what would it be like if Kerry get them in an All Ireland final? And just speaking from a kind of a local point of view, Offaly hurling rivalries not massive, particularly in the last while, because we're kind of gone down the pecking order. But in football, Offaly Westmeath is a brilliant rivalry. Over around Tubber and Moat, where you're on a border, absolute hatred. A lot of them in Tubber would have went to school in Moat and Moat Community College as well. I know Bernard Allen would have went there, and he probably would have played against Westmeath when Desi Dolan would have been teaching him in Moat. Absolute hatred. It's hard to go against it. My uncle was actually vice chairman in Westmeath at the county board, but he's a born and bred for man, so he used to absolutely love it. He'd be absolutely stalking it up. But that's probably the local rivalry that stands out most to me.
Fintan, Barry Cleary replied saying the Galway Tipperary one, and he said 30 years, 7 wins each, and the trilogy of 15, 16, 17, that was the best I've ever seen. 2 games where neither team had more than a 1-score lead. It's a super rivalry. But would you put that up there among the best historically? I mean, there was probably 60 or 70 years where they weren't really meeting each other, but does that matter anymore? Because can we go with recency bias and say that is now the cream of the crop?
Yeah, I get what you're saying about historically, and I think if that's the kind of criteria, then I know what you mean about the kind of Cork Tip, because they played each other so regularly. But I think Michael's you're making a good point there about the kind of dilution of it with the Black Door, and even more so now with the round robin. It's great, but you take something like Cork and Tip played a really good game. It was at 18. It was a great draw in Thurles. But I mean, that game doesn't really stand out because there was so much other stuff happened that summer, and they were both sitting in the championship and all that. I think the games that kind of elevate a rivalry were probably the ones where one team landed a knockout blow, which is why probably the Kilkenny Tip one, because they were all Ireland finals. And there was never any kind of a safety net when Kilkenny and Tip were playing in championship. But like that Galway Tip, it's probably, it's not really kind of talked about a lot. I mean, like, you think Galway Tip, maybe people talk about the kind of late 80s, that kind of rivalry at the time when it was all Ireland finals on the line. But those semi-finals are absolutely brilliant, and I think they'll definitely stand the test of time. And the stories in terms of, like, Shane Maloney wasn't on the panel, I think, at the start of 15. He comes back in and gets the winning point at the end of that game. The way Tipperary, I don't think there was a winning score, was there, in 16? I think they were up by 2 and Galway got one back, but couldn't play it back any further. And then obviously Joe Canning's point in 17 and the stuff as well. I think what made that interesting was to say, Eamon O'Shea's role. He's heavily involved in Galway Club GA, lives and works there, involved in Tipperary. Micheál Donoghue kind of had a foot in both camps over a couple of years as well. And just the standard of hurling and the fact that they both kind of went through, while a lot of those Tip fellas had a medal, the fact that they won to get a second one was a big thing for them. The duels between the likes of Callan and Daithí Burke, Callan getting 3-9, 15. So yeah, I think that's a good modern day one in terms of kind of close competitiveness. But rivalry, I suppose, is all about kind of fans, really, isn't it? And that's why I think border is kind of key to it.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of comments in about different ones. Dwayne Mulgrew, Tyrone versus Armagh, Donegal, Derry, Kerry or Dublin. Thomas Brown said Dublin and Meath for a few years, but of course because Meath are completely under the thumb, it's hard to say that one is anymore. Brian McGrath says Tyrone, Derry, and then Oren Waldron says Tip and Kilkenny by a mile, Michael.
Yeah, Tip and Kilkenny is a fair rivalry. Just when you're looking down through the whole history of it all, like, you're going back, like, it's more so even than Dublin Kerry probably. It's been going on because hurling there's going to be fewer counties involved. and their neighbours and everything, and down around South Tip, and there's like, I know Eddie Brennan, I was doing a live show with him last year, and someone had a lovely little quip to him about how does it feel knowing that your kids are going to grow up playing for Tipperary and this kind of crack, because he was living in Tipperary and he was married to a Tipperary woman. And you can see what I love about the Tip Kilkenny rivalry is yeah, good man, you'll have a nice little, you could have a couple of nippy forwards. What I love about it is that there is a fair hatred. The more than Tomás Mulcahy said about the hatred between Cork and Tip, there is a fair old hatred, and it was bitter enough between Tip and Kilkenny there, particularly 2009, 10, 11, because it was kind of like a clash of styles almost, and a clash of cultures as well. That's kind of what I liked about that. Rivalries are diluting though, so I would say probably the one, yeah, Munster wise or provincially, I'd say Tip and Cork. Nationally, Dublin and Kerry.
Galway Mayo is worth mentioning too. I mean, Galway had an awful lot of wins there in the last couple of years, but to some degree, was their rivalry overtaken a little bit by Mayo's unbelievable games with Dublin? And again, it comes back to that whole thing with All Ireland's been on the line for them.
I think it does. And well, I mean, you think in 98, everyone's only watched the year from Sunday numerous times. The year starts that year with a win over Mayo. And obviously Mayo then kind of come back and beat them in 99, and at that stage they were both going for All Ireland finals, and obviously Galway got over the line. But then more recently it just feels like Mayo were absolutely wiping the floor with them. Was it 13 they destroyed them in Salt Hill, and then once Galway kind of got back at them in 16 they couldn't kind of stop beating them. But the fact that it didn't kind of transfer into All Ireland successes, and that's the thing about the Tip Kilkenny hurling one, I think, because they're not in the same province, so when they meet it's in the All Ireland series, and save for the 2013 qualifier it's generally been in a final or a couple of maybe semi-finals, but it's when everything is on the line. And because you're meeting regularly, and if you're in different provinces, and invariably means you're the top two sides in the country, which is why probably the Dublin Mayo one in football kind of was elevated a bit, maybe a bit over the last decade. So I think it kind of needs that the All Ireland finals to kind of be on the line to really, I suppose, maybe whip up the intensity of it. Like Cork Kilkenny, the 03-06 kind of got pretty heated around that time. Then Tip Kilkenny kind of took it over in the hurling sense, and then I suppose football has been Dublin Mayo. Would have been kind of maybe Tyrone Kerry, I suppose, before that, the kind of 3 times they met, because so much was on the line. And then I guess, well, most people would predict that it's going to be a Dublin Kerry one. That, well, it was a brilliant game of football to watch last year. If they, I suppose familiarity breeds contempt, might be a factor that can kind of develop over the next few years.
Yeah, and a few people have kind of messaged in saying the fact that so many Mayo people work in Galway, that adds to the sort of fun, and as he described it, banter that they'd have. I'd say it'd be similar between Limerick and Clare also, because right there in the Shannon, they're right beside each other. Anyone else?
Just about that one, Shane, I asked funnily enough, I asked Aaron Cunningham. I interviewed him there about 2 months ago, and I asked him, he was obviously away there for a while, and I said, like, your father Alan is involved with Limerick, like, does that leave you, like, would you be wanting Limerick to win? He's just, oh God, no, like, if anything it has the opposite effect, like. And a lot of the Clare boys that go to college in either LIT or UL as well, or Mary I. So yeah, that's definitely a big rivalry in Munster on the West Coast.
You have the thing there as well about kind of city boundaries, off the pitch over the last couple of years. Parts of Clare, there's been talks about city council, maybe parts of Clare going to Limerick, and similar has happened, I think, was in Waterford City reclaiming bits of South Kilkenny. But like the point there about kind of Limerick Clare, like I know a couple of Limerick friends were pretty glad that they were playing Galway in the 2018 final. They reckon mentally it would have kind of spooked them a bit, and the whole build up and all that, if it ended up being a Limerick Clare final. Because I suppose you remember 13 semi-final, there was so much hype after Limerick had won Munster, and then Clare took them down, and there hadn't been too many instances where they'd met in kind of big matches in Croke Park. But like, they're two counties that kind of strike me as well, they're kind of so intertwined between work and college and all that. A bit similar to maybe what you're talking about Galway Mayo. Maybe a lot of Mayo lads go to college in Galway, but definitely with the couple of colleges in Limerick, it's kind of hard to get away from each other, and the boundaries become a bit blurred there.
Absolutely. And if anyone wants to get in any comments and put us right on that, let us know.